I'm Nikki Medanovic. I'm the new eTwinning Communications Officer. I'm going to be the host for the webinar today, and my colleague Marta Giuliani is also with me. Today's speaker is Eleni Mancina. She is currently a professor of computer science at University College of Dublin, and she is also the vice principal for the College of Science. So Eleni, thank you very much for being with us. I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you. And I would like to thank you in my turn now, eTwinning and Nikki and Marta and the whole group for organizing this webinar. As you said, my name is Eleni Mancina, and I am based in Ireland. I'm a professor in School of Computer Science, and I've been in Ireland for the last 20 years. But originally, I am from Greece. I was born in Greece, and I've been away for the last 25 years. Now, I will not be talking today with the hat of a professor or a hat of a VP International for College of Science. I'll be talking, first of all, as the coordinator of the Erasmus Plus project, FANTASIA. It's the fairy tale, augmented fairy tale science, and also as a mother of 3 kids. And I will tell you why I'm saying this. So today I'm in Sicily. I'm not in Ireland. We have the transnational project meeting here today, the last one for FANTASIA project. And we'll present you through Sicily how we're bringing science to life through an augmented fairy tale. Now, my hometown, where I live, is Ireland, and University College Dublin is one of the biggest urban environments, academic environments in Europe. You can see here that we have 350 acres in size, and it's very green. So I hope I can kind of increase the interest of people to visit us. We're a small island next to UK, so we don't have many people just to know where we are. So first of all, before I start talking to you about the project, a couple of things about what the pandemic has taught us the last couple of years. It has taught us, and before I actually say something, can I ask the audience or whoever is here, we have some attendees, if you can put in the chat, what is your role? Are you an academic? Are you a teacher in primary school, secondary school? It would be nice for me to get an idea to who I'm speaking to, although this is going to be a recorded session for other people to watch later on. So those of us that are teaching, we know now through the pandemic that the school is not only a physical building where we're based. Also, we know that there are relational and socioeconomical dynamics that they are providing this synergy within the fabric of schooling. Education and schooling is innately pastoral with care and empathy at its core, and performativity holds higher status than process. Also, schooling at distance, we have seen how problematic it is, especially when it is in the 2D environment. And daily interactions are fundamental. It's fundamental to have face-to-face interactions in a 3D world. So learning should be fun, should be fostering creativity and innovation. And technology enables, but also it can exclude learners. So let's talk about that in our webinar today. So FANTASIA project, it started as an idea. Dr. Christos Ioannidis had written a nice fairy tale, and the idea came from a conversation of how can we actually provide this fairy tale in a new inclusive world in an emerging environment. And FANTASIA actually aims to develop an educational package. It is not just a mobile app, it's not just a fairy tale through a mobile app. You will see later on that we are interconnecting the scientific concepts and skills that the students will be learning with other activities like with music, with dancing. So who are the users? Anybody. The support of an adult is required, especially for very young kids, in order to use the app. It can take place in the class or in science centers or at home. First and most, it's free, it's open source, everything is free to be used through the Erasmus Plus project, and I will show you where to have access to. We have a rigorous evaluation process, and actually I was lucky today was organized this webinar because I can show you some of our results. And the partners involved were from Ireland, Greece, and Italy. The aim was these educational packets, first of all, to be used by anyone and to be able to be implemented in the classrooms or at homes when students were at home in the pandemic, and also to evaluate the impact and see if it's important or not to include these emerging technologies in our classrooms. The intellectual outputs, those that were familiar with the previous Erasmus Plus calls, we have intellectual outputs like work packages. So intellectual output 1 was about creating the fairy tale in a book, also creating a self-training manual with a theoretical framework and take through the teachers step by step, train them of how to use fairy tale science and augmented reality. Then the intellectual output 2, we had to create the scenarios of the book, tangible augmented reality book, actually a physical book that the students can take or they can download as PDF, create interactive 3D content for the app, and use the mobile AR app with voiceover so that we can have multilingual facility. We also have documentation on the standards used and the creation of the digital repository so everybody around the world can use the content of the fairy tale, take the objects and create maybe other fairy tales if they want to, document the manuals, and also report on the evaluation of the project. The impact assessment was very important, and we had several meetings with my partners here in Sicily in order to identify a standardized way of assessing the impact. We know the students are interested, we know it's a big hype right now, exam education. They're already immersed in this type of applications back then, even with the start of Pokemon, but we needed to evaluate on an assessed, standardized test in order to see the statistical analysis, the quantitative mainly, to see what was the impact of this intervention. So within the first intellectual output, which concepts was this app meant for and the actual fairy tale? What is the shape of Earth? Now we're talking about knowledge for students around 4th class primary school. So what is the shape of the Earth? Why do we have day and night? And why do some things float and others sink? Dr. Christos Ioannidis had done some research during his PhD about the mental models in educational settings and the mental models of the Earth. There are 3 different ones. There is the initial, so how the actual knowledge representation within the mental model of a kid around that age is being perceived. Sometimes, for example, that the Earth is flat. Then we can have synthetic models and we have the scientific model. So what do we know about these concepts and how we can actually help this mental model knowledge representation to get to know what the students know and actually develop the app as well. The students have been asked in the past on how they figure that the Earth is. You can see here flat Earth, dual Earth, and some of them have the flat Earth here as well. So it all depends on how the students are perceiving the mental models, for example, of day and night. One of them is that the sun is occluded by clouds and darkness, or the sun moves out into space. And this is something that we had to retrieve from the students. So what is happening when the sun sets, for example, where does the sun go? The other scientific concept is activating the student's mind in order to get to know what does it mean that an object is light, which objects can float, and also what about the shape of an object. So the fairy tale. So we have the full content. I'll just leave the slide so you can read it in your own time. There is a physical book, and the fairy tale is about a young person, John or Yanis, who starts a trip around the earth in order to explain the mystery of life to him, namely the explanation of the day and night cycle. So during these trips around Earth, then he will have to solve some scientific problems. And there has to be some observations to be made during the trip, has to be done some experiments, use some materials, and meet some people along the way. And step by step, the young person is discovering knowledge. And this is a fairy tale. This is a fairy tale. The students connect with this person through the app in terms of what this person knows when they're traveling and what they don't know, and how, for example, can they make their own boat to cross the river. Now, the scenarios, we had to create some scenarios with detailed descriptions, and this is another issue. I will mention it around the end of this presentation. We figured that the lesson plans in XR education, they're very, very important. When we're creating scenarios and content within augmented reality, for example, mobile labs, we have to make sure that they're representing the exact curriculum and what the students need to learn to be in parallel with the standardized educational system. Then a discussion of the difficulties that students have in learning in specific concepts. So we have to take into account the user requirements and the difficulties they encounter. A description as well of kinetic activities. We don't want the students to just be on the screen all the time. There is music that was created within the content. There is kinetic activities, and you will find all that in the training manual under a repository. Also, the 3D content, you'll find it as well in the digital repository, and it can, for example, be used. So we have the sun, or we have different shells from the sea. So you can reuse these 3D models in other applications that you might want. So just to give you an example of the fairy tale, how it starts, so you can get a little bit of the concept of how the narration was done. And as I said, it's in Greek, it's in English, and in Italian as well on our repository. Feel free, if you know any other colleagues in Europe and abroad, to actually provide the content, and feel free to let them know that they can translate it too. Apologies about that. Let's start again.
On the road to the Sun Palace. Where is the Sun Palace? Once upon a time, there was a young boy called Yanis. Yanis had never been to school. There was no school near his small village. He lived on the mountain with his family and their sheep. Every morning, they took their flock to graze in the fields. He would spend all day with his brother and his father. He watched their sheep grazing fresh grass on the slopes and the meadows of the mountain. He spent endless hours in the open air observing the mysteries of nature. He knew a lot of things about sheep and dogs, about wild animals as well as wolves, foxes, jackals, eagles. All animals were his friends, and the trees were his brothers. He also knew all kinds of herbs because his grandmother had taught him a lot about their healing powers. He loved to learn by observing and asking the older ones. Late in the evenings, his greatest joy was to listen to fairy tales from his grandfather, sitting by the fireplace. His people and nature were his school. There was something that impressed him deeply and puzzled him at the same time. The journey of the sun. Where does the sun go when night comes? What happens far in the west behind the mountain tops? Where does the sun hide? Again, at dawn, how does the sun rise all shining behind the top of the eastern mountains? He tried hard to find an explanation. He asked others, but nobody could give him a good answer. No one in his little village had ever been to school. People there could hardly read or write. Yanis, however, definitely wanted to learn about the sun. Often, he sat and gazed at the sun hiding slowly behind the mountains in the west among the purple clouds until the sky darkened and turned deep blue and the stars appeared. Sometimes he would leave his bed before daybreak, step outside their little house, and wait for the sun to emerge. The mountains in the east lit up slowly. The rays of the sun would drive darkness away, and all nature would wake up. It seemed to him that he saw horses wrapped up in flames, taking the sun and driving him up in the sky from east to west. At the end of this journey, a golden palace waited for the sun, just like in grandfather's fairy tales. There, the sun would rest after his long journey in the sky.
So you got an idea about the narration, about the music, and you will see in the training material how you can actually blend this with kinetic activities and the mobile app usage. So we have the story, we have the music, the scenarios with pedagogical targets, the illustrations, augmented reality implementations of the scenes, and the drama and kinesthetic activities. This is the actual story, and you will find it translated in the different languages under the digital repository fantasiadr.ucd.ie. And this is as well the self-training manual to take you step by step as a teacher what you will need to include if you want in the different scenarios of the fairy tale. So with the app scenarios, we have sinking and floating, the earth and gravity, time, day, and night. And you can find the app as Fairy Tale Fantasia under Google Play and Apple Store. It will be there available all the time. And with the book and the apps, you have an augmented magic, and the students are just thrilled to do something with the app and actually learn and move around, create activities with the group. So the only thing you have to do is launch the app on your mobile phone, scan the pages of the book, and then start the magic. This is the kind of a demo here. You can work in iPads and different tablets as well. So I'll just give you a demo here of how the augmented reality in science and engineering and STEM subjects can all blend together. I didn't include the music so that I can explain step by step of what is happening. So when you start, you can scan the page of the book. And we have one scenario here for the floating and sinking. The student picks a scenario. And then wooden floor. So can you help Yanis? What kind of objects do you think that float? So the student makes a hypothesis, and then they need to experiment to test their hypothesis. So they actually have to take the object and they have to place it in the water to see if it's going to float or not. So only some big and heavy objects float while others sink. So then they make further hypotheses and then they test again. So for example, if the wooden materials will float or sink. So there is a number of hypotheses through the different scenarios. What will happen if you change the shape now? What happens to the hollow objects? There's different sizes of the objects. So all the curved objects will float. So now another scenario here is about the day and night cycle. So the student can see the shape. Then it is asking a number of different assumptions and the student has to pick the actual answer. If it's wrong, they have to repeat it again. And you can see as it's moving around the sun, the earth, the dates are changing too. How long the earth takes to go around the sun. So there's a longer video with all the scenarios. If you need any help, let us know. And you will find in the digital repository the 3D objects, as I said, in different formats that you can reuse. And this is the list of the different materials that we have within the project. Please feel free to give us any feedback. All the languages are there. And in terms of the impact assessment, it has been very, very important to actually try to understand how to assess the impact. So we collected the data to evaluate the effect of this intervention. And our partners, CNR ITD in Italy, they designed a web-based tool for data collection and visualization. And we just analyzed the first data that we have collected. So first of all, it was the timetable for planning the test activities. And the project was started at 2019. Initially, it was a 2-year duration, but because of COVID and the pandemic and the schools were closed, we couldn't do the interventions. So we applied for an extension and the project is finishing now in October 2022. So we implemented the testing activity to involve all stakeholders and to test FANTASIA application within specific settings, and then a report on the final findings of the evaluation. We had evaluation at the student level from the experimental groups, and we had, of course, control groups as well. And I will give you the numbers that the students participated from different countries. For the impact of the FANTASIA pedagogical package, we wanted to see the satisfaction, the attitude towards science, the engagement with the activities themselves, the scientific skills, and the scientific knowledge. So we had fourth grade students from Greece and Italy. The classrooms were divided over two conditions. The ones that had just the book as the fairy tale and the other one just the book augmented. And we had to compare the pre and post intervention data for both groups for the evaluation purposes. In terms of the measurement, we used, for example, for the knowledge of scientific concepts, we used questionnaires and it was web-based. Scientific testing, we used the test. And attitude towards science learning, we used the Likert type questionnaires. And the final questionnaire was a Likert as well as the rest. The socio-demographics we collected from questionnaires from parents and or guardians of the students. So the knowledge of scientific concepts questionnaire, it involved 27 questions. An example is this one, where the shape of the earth, the students had to answer these questions and then we collected and analyzed. Then in terms of the attitude towards the science learning, we had 16 questions. And these questions, they actually derived from the teams contest in a standardized format. And the final questionnaire, it was age 18 to 14 questions, depending on the team they were in. And they had two formats, as you see here, for the control and the intervention team. The scientific inquiry cycle, it was based on the standardized SIG test. There were 13 items. We had to exclude some items from the original SIG test due to GDPR because there would be identified students. And some of them had the binary format and some others required paper and pencil administration. And I would like to thank all the teachers involved in this process, and I do appreciate that there was an administration job for them during the interventions. So for the scientific inquiry cycle, there was the generation of hypotheses, then the experiment took place, data were collected, we analyzed the data, we evaluated the evidence, and we drew inferences, and then we let the students generate further hypotheses. Now, items describing situations based on the children's real life experiences for the SIG test, we had the two questions formats. One is the order of a set of steps, and the other one is selecting the correct step in a given sequence of steps. In order of a set of steps, you can see here we follow the scientific inquiry cycle. Children must stick 6 cards in the right order, and it's time-based items as well. So we time them how fast they're going to do it. For the SIG test, what happens is the students are starting and then they identify the research question, generate the hypothesis, the plan, experiment data collection, and then we make an inference. Then finally, with these type of questions, then it's just about selecting the correct step, and then we have 10 items. And of course, that was a single choice questions as well. In terms of the SIG test, that was a guided administrative task from the students. We had to collect this data from the standardized format. So they had to be printed, then write the answers and then posted back to the partners. The final questionnaire for the teachers had 13 to 20 questions, and you can see that it involved how easy it was for the students to use it, the enjoyment, the personal ease from the teachers, the personal perception of efficacy, and a couple of more questions. And the students' engagement as well. We wanted to know how they found it having this type of emerging technology in their classrooms. And also we asked the parents and the guardians for the socio-demographics and the lifestyle of the students, and that was 30 questions. And that was a little bit tricky, but as we found that parents didn't really like to disclose information of the socio-demographics. So we will report as much as we have collected. And we had an online platform for the paper-based administration. We gave specific tokens to students and parents. We didn't know who the student was or who the parent was, but these were the numbers that were given to the teachers, and then the teachers were associating the number with the student and their parents. And they were, so for us, it was completely anonymous. The online platform, if you go to fantasia.ucd.ie, you can access the platform through our website, and you can see it's on IO4 here, and you can have a look at the type of assessment and the materials that you might want to reuse. Now, in terms of the online platform, that you will see there the access to the questionnaires. We have questionnaires for the parents, we have questionnaires for the students, and questionnaires for the teachers. Now, if you want to use it and it requires a token, please do email me and you will receive a token, or you can email the administrator on the website. So the online platform, they have to complete a questionnaire of, for example, they give their age and they give the background knowledge in the subjects. So the aim for the impact assessment, because that was a really huge task for the project, was to evaluate the pedagogical value of Fantasia. So we have the project until October 2022. We have finished now the interventions, and we wanted to actually advance the way of we're collecting the data and report back to European Commission in terms of how this can be assessed when we have this type of interventions. So we implemented the testing activity, and then we will report on these issues. So let's have a look at the schools that participated. We have 2 schools from Greece and 1 from Italy. And originally we had involved 8 classrooms from Greece. And then at the end, due to the high workload of the teachers, we ended up with 5 classrooms from Greece and 2 first grade originally, and we ended up with 1 first grade to be in augmented reality intervention. Also, we had 4 classrooms from Kilkis in northern Greece initially, and they stayed with us. So thank you very much. Maybe that's because Dr. Christos Ioannidis was the school principal as well. And all the Monti Play schools in Italy, 4th grade, they participated and they fulfilled the interventions. So in terms of the excuse me, in terms of the total number of students now after the withdrawal, we will report on these numbers through a consort diagram on our website very soon. 91 students were involved from Greece, 22 from the first classroom, and we had 167 students from Italy. Total, we had 10 teachers, 5 from each country. And as I said, we'll report further details. In terms of the timeline of the testing activity, so what happened in 2021, we tested with a school from Kilkis as a first round, the 4th grade students intervention. We got the first feedback from the teachers and the students and the parents, and then we moved on in 2022 in order to have the proper intervention with the Kilkis school and the Italian schools. In terms of pre-test and post-test questionnaires, you can see here how many were collected. So, for example, pre-test questionnaires on the knowledge of scientific concepts, we had 124, and post-tests 107. So we had a different test to measure for its activity and its result that we wanted to actually identify how the impact can be assessed. When we analyze now the impact, the data from these pre and post tests, and actually this is just finished this task at the moment, we found that if you can see here that this is the condition. So with augmented reality intervention, we had 101 questionnaires filled in, and we had 96 from our control group. Now, the mean, the standard deviation at the pre-test on the knowledge of scientific concepts, it was 1132, the mean, and then it increased 1678. So there was an increase of 0.39 here in terms of standard deviation, whereas here it was less. So that means the augmented reality did increase the actual knowledge of scientific concepts. And similar, the scientific inquiry cycle test as well looks increased. Although the learning attitude and self-efficacy, it doesn't seem that it is as significant statistically. And then when we further analyze with the ANOVA on gain scores that were computed, we found that there's no really differences in gain scores between the two conditions. But nevertheless, talking yesterday here with the teachers, I found that there is excitement. So maybe we have to look into further research on the actual motivation and the psychological energy that the students are bringing in the class when there is this type of interventions. But I'm happy to get any feedback from your own experiences. For example, students from both the conditions, they considered the educational kit easy to use and they enjoyed the experience. They rated the use of FANTASIA kit as useful in ameliorating their scientific knowledge skills. Then teachers also perceive the positive impact on their behavior, on their emotions, the cognitive engagement. And I have another project that is dealing with the augmented reality impact for positive behavior in school environments. So we're applying the PBIS scenarios with augmented reality applications, and I will tell you at the very end of this presentation. Also, the teachers reported that the students found it quite easy to use the AR educational kit, and the teachers enjoyed the use and they recognized the positive impact. So it was all a positive outcome, and they had no relevant difficulty in the usability of the system. Now, and that was Fantasia and the fairy tale science and the results we got. I just want to mention a couple of things of some other projects that I have taken on in the past and where I see the research is going. But before I move on, because I think it's, yes, I've been talking for around 35 minutes. Do we have any questions in the chat? I can see a question here. Is it easy for a teacher to be able to guide pupils to use this app, or he needs to learn more about it first? For example, have some training. Actually, the way, if you have a look at the project digital repository on the website, then you will find all the training materials you need. Instead of rushing and upload the mobile app, it's better to read through the training materials just to familiarize mainly with the full activities, not just the technology that is there, and avail this interdisciplinary connection of experts that have created something that it is not just the object becoming alive, but there is kinetic activities you can use in the classroom. And let me know if you have any questions. We always organize workshops and we talk to the teachers through Zoom, or if you're in Ireland, we can organize a workshop in the school. But do please have a look at the training material that's already there. And if you have any questions, we can organize a call online and we can take you through the application without any problem. So a little bit of a history of other projects that are happening. So the Fantasia was mainly for the scientific skills of the students in primary school. And before that, there were other projects that had taken place. So the ADHD Augmented, for example, we had developed from 2017 to 19 some web-based augmented reality for students diagnosed with ADHD. That was a Horizon H 2020 project. And we wanted to identify if the digital technologies with augmented reality would actually have an impact and effect to the reading and spelling students with ADHD, diagnosed with ADHD. So there was a marker-based application. You can see the marker here, the project. You can have a look at it at aha.ucd.ie. There is a full spectrum of content there, and it helps students with spelling and reading abilities. The problem that exists with students with, I don't like saying disabilities, with special abilities is a better term, is that they will rush into the text, so they will not pay attention. So the comprehension will be much less with students diagnosed with ADHD, and normally they would be really active in the class. So actually the percentage that we had for the improvement, apart from the improvement in spelling, if you have a look at the actual reading speed, the app made the students to actually read slower. So by reading slower, and that's what we're aiming here, to read slower so they can understand and comprehend better the text. So the impact was very positive. We couldn't generalize. We had 117 students diagnosed with ADHD that were participating in this pilot, but we couldn't generalize because as you're aware, if there is an SNA teacher with us today, you will all know that we have comorbidities. So you can't say that somebody has one disability or one special ability 100%. So we wouldn't know if it was because of the dyslexia or because of the ASD or from the ADHD. And another question arrived, and I was expecting that. I noticed the notification, "You're wrong." How do pupils react? Should we give them something more mild, as we do with adults? For example, "You can do better than that." I would agree with you, but when our pedagogy experts reviewed it, they actually said that's absolutely fine. And we wanted to see what would be the reaction, but the students didn't have any problem with that. They were so engaged with the application that we had no negative comments on this. But I'm still waiting on qualitative feedback, and I will let you know if something will come up to this. And in terms of another project now, we have the augmented reality for educational systems. And if any of you is interested, so we started with AHA, then we found out that the teachers were really keen on content, really keen on making, be empowered from the augmented reality content, bring their subject into life. So I wrote an application to the Horizon 2020, another one on actually creating an augmented reality educational toolkit, and give the opportunity to the teachers to not actually depend on apps that they have no control of. So we have created an authoring toolkit for all teachers, open source, that they can use. And you will find more information on areteproject.eu. And what we're doing right now, there is around 3,500 students involved in Europe. We are finishing our last interventions this December, and we will report by April. And we managed to develop and evaluate the effectiveness of the augmented reality content toolkit. I know some of the teachers are going through the training at the moment in Europe. We applied UX design, the human-centered interaction design. We have experts in the consortium, and we evaluated it through 4 pilots in this project. The first pilot is about augmented reality and literacy skills. The second one is augmented reality for geography and geometry. The third one is in positive behavior in school settings. And the fourth one is about training the teachers to create their own augmented reality content and to upload it on the learning management system. We have created plugins for Moodle, and the teachers are free to use it. This is our consortium. This is the QR code if you want to have a look at it now on our website. As you can see, we have some fantastic 10 partners here, all working together. And it's quite a dynamic consortium. We are approachable. If you have any question, just let us know. If you want to be trained on the authoring toolkit, let us know and we can plan for a tutorial. Normally it would take around 20 minutes and then you can have the time to familiarize yourself. This is some information about the work packages of the project. And another issue that is very, very close to my heart, I've been involved on ethics and XR ethics for the last 5 to 8 years. And finally, we actually have a strong report through the IEEE standards with 42 recommendations at all levels for what to consider when we're bringing officially the XR either as augmented reality or virtual reality in our educational system. And I believe governments and especially ministries of education should be aware of this before they make any commitment, because there is a lot of ethical issues that need to be considered and resolved before we embed this new technology in our curriculum. So these are the 4 pilots, as I mentioned earlier on. And in terms of the ARETE stakeholders, so far we have 2,708 students, and you can see that the countries that are being involved in the interventions, but there is many more countries that have actually taken on board on ARETE project pilots. For example, I know in South America, they have actually translated everything in Spanish, so they are using it in Peru at the moment. So for pilot 1, you can see the architecture of the system, how the input is taken from the learner, and how the output is taken through the data collection XAPI statements. And we have learning locker, and there is a full architecture in our deliverables as well if you want to see on the website. This is how the ARETE pilots would look like. For pilot 2, if you go, they all have our logo, so they're identifiable, so feel free to use them. And there is content exploration as well as collaborative work. Students can play together from different classrooms, from the same classroom, but from different countries, and there is some group work as well there. And this is our pilot 3. There is RPro. This is the alien that is helping the students in the class to show them how to behave. There's a number of animations on how, for example, students should behave while walking in the corridor. I'm just trying to, yes, and you can see some examples here. And that's embedded in schools that have already the PBIS system within their curriculum. So I mentioned before, we have a GitHub as well in terms of the development. Also the digital repository, you will find it at arete.ucd.ie. And we chose Moodle as the learning management system. So what happens is that the teachers are getting trained, no matter what the subject they're teaching, to create an augmented reality scene, then upload it through the Mirage XR Arete platform into the learning management system where they have the rest of their material, and then the students will be able to use it within their own, on their own time, and have the content alive in front of them. So this is how it looks. Somebody, you feel free to actually join our Moodle community because we are creating a marketplace where all the teachers can create content and upload. And if somebody is teaching geography in 5th class, they can just have a look at the content another teacher has created for their own 5th class. And you will see the activities when they're uploaded is in Moodle in one of the lists here. So if you want to try the authoring toolkit, please do use these QR codes and also sign up to the Arete Moodle with your email. And you can take a screenshot if you want of this slide and use it later. And Here we are preparing, we had the kickoff workshop of the standards and in Arete, and the project actually has been nominated at the Standards Innovations Awards 2022 for a research project. And let's watch what's going to happen on the 3rd of October. We cross fingers that our work was good enough. And the main target is to make the kids' education a memorable experience, a magic and memorable experience at all fronts. Having looked at the different new age technologies, have a look at what's happening around the world as well. It does have a slow entrance in the market, in the industry, but we have seen that anything is possible right now, and there is some shifting towards remote training, remote teaching. Now, they have estimated, the experts, that we can scale up the user experiences, but do please have a look at the 42 recommendations in the ethics white paper, because if something we need to pay attention to is, one, the ethics, and the other one is have the skill set to actually create the content itself, because the technology is ready in terms of hardware, in terms of software, but we need a standardized kind of content within the curriculum in order to match the curriculum on the face-to-face teaching and learning. I will not go through the details here about the market. You can watch them later and have a look on what is actually happening with the new headsets that will be created, and about the different companies that are training through the VR or AR headsets at the moment. So I think I will pause here because the time is 5:52, especially to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Eleni, for the presentation. You were really, I mean, you presented extensively. I think all the content displayed. So let's see if you have questions. If the participants have a question, I see also that you addressed already some of them that you picked from the chat. I see positive comments overall. Thank you so much for all the input. Natalia is working on a primary school and she found everything really, really interesting. Impressed of the outcomes. Thank you very much. Huge work. Great that you have considered ethics in augmented reality. If you have questions, please, we still have 5 minutes, so feel free. We are waiting. Athanasia is asking only for primary school teachers.
The content for pilot 1, 2, and 3, the 3 pilots, are for primary school teachers. But the pilot 4, that is actually training teachers, academics, I train even professors to do that, it's for all teachers. So even if you're teaching in secondary school, and for example, you're teaching chemistry, you can use the augmented reality authoring toolkit, and you can reuse, because we have linked it with the Sketchfab that has already the 3D models there. And you can upload models there, and you can create the augmented scene, and you can make your own annotations. Now, I can see here that that's Athanasia's questions, is it? That's Athanasia's, yes.
Yeah,
so Athanasia, if you are in Greece on the 23rd, I'm presenting at the Kapodistrian University for Scientics conference at 8 p.m. So if anybody is interested, after the presentation, I can show you how to actually utilize the augmented reality authoring toolkit. That's great. So I will meet you in a couple of days.
Thank you very much, Eleni, for addressing these. And I think it's indeed a great opportunity to be able to meet in such occasion. And yes, let's see, I see some participants are still typing, so maybe let's wait 1 or 2 more minutes. Meanwhile, I remind you that the recording will be available, the presentation will be available, so you'll be able to double check everything later on. But since Eleni is here with us, I think it's a really good opportunity for you to address the questions right now. Okay, I think I saw some participants typing, but I see nothing now on the chat. So maybe there are no more questions to be taken.
Am I still sharing? Sorry, am I still sharing?
Yes,
Okay.
we still see the slides.
I don't, something's going on. Just need to see.
So, Eleni, I would like to thank you once again very much for being with us today. I think all the content you presented was really inspiring and useful for the teachers interested in embarking in the same journey. So thank you very much. I thank also all the participants. I see hands clapping here, so that's great. Thank you very much for all your positive reactions, all your questions, and all your comments in the chat. I hope to see you soon again in the next webinars organized by eTwinning, and Eleni, I hope for future collaboration as well. So thank you very much. I wish you all a good evening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.